problem in thinking people were inferior to me and thinking that if you didn't agree with me, you were automatically wrong because I'm a genius. I know what I'm doing. Suffice to say, life has taught me differently over the years. Thank God. I couldn't handle those classes because they were just watered down too much. It was like, a lot of them were like the same classes I took in elementary school, but being taught to high schoolers. And some of the teachers, they just didn't care. You showed up to class, you got your credit for being there. They didn't actually teach you anything. They didn't assign work. They didn't care what you did. It was just show up and sit there. So that didn't work very well for me either. When I was 16, I got fed up with life at my parents' house. Between my mom's neglect and hoarding and my dad's actual abuse, I couldn't take it anymore. So I moved out. And I moved in with my brother and his wife. At the time, I thought my brother knew everything that was going on. Later, I found out he didn't. My former sister-in-law was, well, I'll call her a bitch because that's the polite way to say it. I cannot stand her. Very, very few people I would like to see harmed. She's one of them. And it started off innocently enough. She was charging me $300 a month to stay on their couch. And I had to buy my own food. I was not allowed to eat anything of theirs. And I had to babysit whenever they needed me to without pay. And I had to be in school. So I started going to alternative ed out there, and I was working full-time at Taco Bell. And their trailer payment, oh yes, this was a single-wide 3-bedroom trailer, was $300 a month. Yeah, but I was desperate to get out of my parents' house, so I was willing to put up with it. And it taught me a lot. It taught me how to be more humble. It taught me that, well, really there's no better way to put it other than my huge egotistical head got popped down to size, which was a good thing. So I lived with them for about a year. When I was 17, I got fed up with Ty. That was my sister-in-law's name, Ty. I got fed up with her and moved on and into an apartment with 2 former Marines. Notice I said former, not ex. I learned very quickly that the only ex-Marine is a dead Marine. Otherwise, you're just a former Marine. Chad and Keith were good guys. They were like big brothers to me. Although they would take picking to an extreme and like pin me down and tickle me and do horrible things, but nothing like truly abusive. They were having fun. Most of the time I was, but once in a while things went too far and just like, enough. But that's what it's like with brothers. I'm sure most of you know. And I quit going to school again at that point. And I was with Keith and Chad for about maybe 6 months or so. And now the funny thing about this is while I was with them, one weekend I went over to a friend's house and stayed at a friend's house for the weekend. That weekend, although I had never met him before, my now husband came over and was visiting with Keith and Chad. 2 of us never met, didn't meet for like another couple years after that. But that's part of what I sit there and go, it was meant to be, because there were so many times my husband and I almost met. Anyway, so I was with Keith and Chad for like 6 months, and then their lease was up. They were going splitting different ways, so I was on the look again to see about finding another place. And I ended up moving in with Keith's brother, and the funny thing is, I can't even remember his name. I was 18 at the time. He had a little 1-bedroom house. He had the bedroom, I had the couch, but it pulled out into a bed, so it was like a real bed for the first time in a long time. And I was just working. I was what was I at the time? Oh, I was a nanny. So I worked with these little children, and I really enjoyed working with kids, had a blast with it. Oh, sorry, backing way up. When I was 9 years old, there was a Vietnamese family that lived across the street from us with 6 children, ages just born to 6. And every day after school, I'd go over there and help take care of the kids. I was a mother's helper. So I've always taken care of kids. Loved doing it. Loved helping them with homework and the whole 9 yards. So anyway, now catching back up to 18 years old, I was renting my own house with damn, still can't remember his name, Keith's brother. And I was a nanny, having a great time. Then Keith's brother had gone up to spend time with their family, and I was at the house by myself. And I woke up in the middle of the night because I smelled smoke. And I turn on the light, and there's smoke billowing out from behind this mirror. I was 18 at the time. You'd think I would have enough sense to pick up the phone and call 911. I did not. I picked up the phone and called my brother and asked him, what do you do when there's smoke coming out of your wall? I had to hear from him, you know, get out of the house, go across the street, call the fire department, yada, yada, yada. So I did that. Called up the fire department from the payphone across the street, well, 911. It was like, they asked, oh, this is 911, what's your emergency? And my response was, I think my house is on fire. And she said, okay, why do you think your house is on fire? And my response, because there's black smoke coming out of the wall. And she said, okay, we'll send the fire department out, stay outside of the house, blah, 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 blah. Hung up the phone. 18-year-old kid. I thought I was smart. Really, I was stupid. Realized my cat was in there, so I went in, got my cat, put him in the car. Then thought about it and went, wait a minute, I got clothes in there. I don't want them to get ruined. So I went back in, got some clothes, got some blankets, got a whole bunch of my stuff. I was pulling stuff out and putting it in my car when the fire department rolled up. And then I moved my car across the street so that it wasn't in danger. The house burned down completely. After that, I lived out of my car for, I want to say like maybe 4 months, 5 months. Because I immediately called my sister-in-law and she told me I was not allowed to move back in with them. I couldn't go back home because I couldn't put up with the situation of that house, and all of that chaos was not acceptable. So I chose to live out of my car. I'd go to truck stops, take showers. For a little while I kept nannying, but it got to be too complicated and they let me go. I eventually ended up going to a friend of mine who I met through alternative ed, and I stayed with her and her parents for a while. And then when I was 19, I found another apartment with another guy. Now all these guys that I've lived with, honest to God, you know, I swear, nothing ever happened. It was just guys that I looked at like brothers. So ended up moving out to Auburn Hills and was with Ben. And the funny thing about Ben is I never remember his name. I have to stop and think about it. And then I'll be like, okay, what was his name? What was his name? Picture his face. Okay, he's got the big yellow curly Brillo head. And there's got to be a name with it. And eventually it pops up. So I met Ben playing a game called Canar. I started playing Canar when I was 17. What Canar is, it stands for Knights and Nobles and Rogues. It is a LARP. It's a live-action role-playing game. How many of you know about the Renaissance Festival, right? You know how they wear those costumes, the garb, the medieval garb? How many of you know about D&D, Dungeons and Dragons? A LARP kind of combines the two. Because you have a character like in D&D, and then you put on the full garb and the clothes, and you have foam-padded weapons, and you run around in the woods, and you have a set of skills that you have from your D&D paper character that you can and can't do, and you beat the crap out of your friends and have a great